In this chapter, we're going to be learning how to develop a graphical user interface using the Swing toolkit that's part of the Java Foundation classes. Swing is a collection of classes that allow you to build graphical user interfaces with things like labels and text boxes and checkboxes and sliders and combo boxes. All of the different widgets or controls that you're used to seeing in a graphical user interface. We can't cover all of these classes in this chapter, but we're going to cover the most fundamental of those. But we're going to start with a very simple example where we display Hello World in a label, just to get you comfortable with Swing programming, if you will. So let's get started. We're going to call this program swingexample.java. And the first thing we have to do is import the Swing library. So notice we write import javax.swing.star, and that will give us all of the classes. Rather than provide you with an introduction to the classes at the beginning, I'll introduce the classes as we go. We're going to look really at just two in this example, frame and label, but they're two important ones. The first thing we're going to do is start our class, SwingExample. And we're actually going to create a constructor for this class, which looks a little odd. We haven't done that before, but that's another way to begin a program. So the first thing we want to do is create a frame. A frame is the window that our graphical user interface is going to be displayed in. So that object comes from the JFrame class. So we write JFrame, and then we name our frame. We're just going to call it frame. Then we call the constructor, and here we're going to put a title that will go in the title bar of the window. So Hello World application will go in the title bar. The next thing we want to do is set the size for our frame. And we'll just pick a size arbitrarily, 400 by 200. For this example, it doesn't matter that much. The next thing we have to do is we have to tell it how we want the frame to close. So that's a method called setDefaultClose operation. And here we're going to pass a constant JFrame exit on, just like so. So that says when we press the close button to exit the program completely. The next step is to create a label. We use the JLabel class to do that. And in that label, all we're going to display is the text Hello World for a typical Hello World first program. So that's how you create a label and put some text into the label. The next step is to add the label to the frame. That's how we put widgets onto our graphical user interfaces, by adding them to the frame. So we take the label and add it to the frame. We want to be able to make the frame visible, so we call the setVisible method with true as the argument to display the class. And that's all we need for our constructor. Now we're ready to write the main program. Now this gets a little bit complex. And to explain it, I have to go into some detail that you're probably not going to understand, or you may not understand. And you're probably going to want to do some background reading. But when you're developing graphical user interfaces in Java need to run in a separate thread. And all that means is that if you understand anything about multi-threaded programming, is that you can have different parts of a program running in different threads. That allows you to have concurrent programs. There's a lot of detail in multi-threaded programming that I can't talk about in this chapter. We have a chapter on multi-threaded programming in this course, so if you haven't looked at that chapter yet, go look at it now to understand more about multi-threaded programming. But we are going to run our user interface in its own thread. So to do that, we have to call a method called invokeLater, along with the constructor to a new runnable object. And to do that, we write public void run. Then we call the constructor for SwingExample, and that will have it running in a separate thread. So we close off the run definition. Then we close off the invokeLater method. This curly brace closes off the new runnable method. This parenthesis closes our argument list for invokeLater. And then we can close off the call with a semicolon. And then we're finished with main and finished with class. So at that point, we're ready to save and then compile. We'll come back, compile the program, and then run it. And here's our Hello World program with Hello World displayed in a single label. Just for fun, let's change the size. That's about the only thing we can affect right here. Let's go 350, 150. Save. Compile it again. And then run it. You notice we have a smaller frame and a smaller application. So that wraps up this introduction to swing programming, and we haven't done very much. But like I was saying before, there's a lot of material to cover, and we need to start out simply. So a Hello World program is always the most simple way to start. And so that's how we started. Now we're ready to move to the next lesson where we're going to look in a little more detail at the different widgets that we can add to a graphical user interface.